The emergency beacon pierced through the void of space like a desperate scream, its distress signal carrying across 17 light-years to reach the monitoring station on Luna Base. Captain Sarah Chen had been enjoying her morning coffee when the alert klaxons began their haunting wail, transforming the quiet morning into chaos. "What VE we got, Rodriguez?" Sarah called out, rushing to the communications console where Lieutenant Maria Rodriguez was frantically adjusting frequencies. It's not from any human vessel, Captain," Rodriguez replied, her voice tight with confusion. "The signal is coming from the Kepler 442 system. But according to our records, that system is supposed to be uninhabited." Sarah frowned, studying the readouts. The Kepler 442 system was one of the frontier worlds that humanity had been slowly exploring as part of the Galactic Expansion Initiative. It was supposed to be nothing more than a collection of barren rocks and gas giants, hardly worth the fuel it took to send probes there. "Can you decode the signal?" Sarah asked, leaning over Rodriguez's shoulder. "Working on it now, Captain. The encryption is strange. It's not using any standard human protocols, but somehow our computers are able to interpret it." Rodriguez's fingers flew across the holographic interface. "Got it. Captain, you need to see this." The main display flickered to life, showing a grainy transmission. The image was distorted, but Sarah could make out what appeared to be a humanoid figure. The being was tall and slender, with pale blue skin and large, dark eyes that seemed to convey desperate urgency even through the static. "People of Earth," the alien said, its voice carrying a melodic quality despite the universal translator's mechanical interpretation. "I am Zephyr 9 of the Altarian Collective. We have monitored your species' expansion into the galactic frontier, and we know of your reputation." Sarah exchanged glances with Rodriguez. Humanity's reputation in the galaxy was still being written, but early encounters with alien species had earned them a particular distinction. While most intelligent species in the galaxy had evolved on worlds with stable climates and predictable conditions, humanity came from Earth, a planet that other species had begun referring to as a death world. Earth's constantly shifting weather patterns, natural disasters, aggressive wildlife, and the need for humans to compete for resources had created a species that was remarkably adaptable, resilient, and when necessary, fierce. Other galactic civilizations, having evolved in more peaceful environments, found humans to be simultaneously fascinating and terrifying. "We are facing an existential threat," Zephyr 9 continued, the transmission crackling with interference. "Our world is under siege by entities we cannot comprehend or combat. We have exhausted all conventional means of defense. We need Deathworlders." The transmission cut to static. Sarah stared at the blank screen for a long moment. "Rodriguez, get me Director Walsh on Priority Channel. And start pulling together everything we have on the Kepler 442 system." "Already on it, Captain," Rodriguez replied, her hands moving efficiently across the controls. "The Director is standing by." The screen flickered again, this time showing the weathered face of Director James Walsh, head of the Galactic Expansion Initiative. His graying hair was disheveled, and his usually calm demeanor showed cracks of concern. "Sarah, I assume you've seen the transmission?" "Yes, sir." "What's our intel on the Altarian Collective?" Walsh's expression grew grim. "That's the problem. We don't have any. This is our first contact with them, and frankly, we had no idea there was any intelligent life in that system. Our last probe sweep showed nothing but empty planets." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Sir, if they've been hiding from our probes, that suggests a level of technology far beyond what we initially assumed." "Exactly. And if a species that advanced is calling for help from Deathworlders, then whatever they're facing must be truly terrifying." Walsh leaned forward. "Sarah, I'm authorizing Operation Frontier Response. You'll be taking the UES Prometheus with a full crew complement. Your mission is to reach the Kepler 442 system, assess the situation, and provide whatever assistance you can." "Understood, sir." "What's my timeline?" "The Prometheus is being prepped now. You launch in 18 hours. And Sarah, be careful. We're going in blind, and that makes this mission extremely dangerous." The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts and the weight of the mission ahead. She turned to Rodriguez, who had been quietly working at her station. Rodriguez, I want you to compile everything we know about Deathworld adaptations and human combat capabilities. If we're going to help these Altarians, we need to understand what exactly makes us different from other species. Already started, Captain. The data is interesting. According to galactic standards, humans are classified as an extreme survivor species. Our ability to adapt to different environments, recover from injury, and most importantly, our psychological resilience in high-stress situations, makes us unique among known intelligent species. Sarah nodded grimly. She had heard the stories from other human crews who had made contact with alien species. The reactions ranged from awe to outright terror when aliens learned about Earth's conditions. The fact that humans could survive in environments that would kill most other species, combined with their tendency to actually thrive under pressure, had earned them a reputation as the galaxy's most formidable warriors. 18 hours later, the UES Prometheus launched from Luna Base with a crew of 200 of humanity's best and brightest. The ship was one of the newer exploration vessels, equipped with the latest in human technology, including adaptive shielding, quantum communication arrays, and a full complement of both scientific and military equipment. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge as the ship entered hyperspace, watching the stars stretch into lines of light. Beside her, Commander Marcus Webb, her second-in-command, reviewed the mission parameters. Captain, we're looking at a 12-day journey to the Kepler 442 system, Webb reported. I've got the crew running full diagnostics on all systems, and Dr. Vance has the science team preparing for every possible scenario we might encounter. Good. What about our combat readiness? Webb's expression grew serious. All weapons systems are online and fully stocked. Major Torres has the Marines running combat drills, and we've got enough firepower to level a small moon. But Captain, if these Altarians are as advanced as we think they are, and they can't handle whatever threat they're facing, then we'll have to be creative, Sarah finished. That's what Deathworlders do, Marcus. We adapt. The journey through hyperspace gave the crew time to study what little information they had about their destination. The Kepler 442 system consisted of 6 planets orbiting a K-type star. The third planet, designated Kepler 442b, was in the habitable zone and showed signs of a breathable atmosphere and liquid water. It was presumably where the Altarians had established their civilization. Dr. Elena Vance, the ship's chief scientist, had been working around the clock to analyze the original transmission. She called Sarah to the science lab on the 5th day of their journey. Captain, I've been studying the transmission signal, and I've discovered something disturbing, Dr. Vance said, her usually calm demeanor showing signs of strain. The interference patterns in the signal aren't random. They're too organized, too purposeful. What are you suggesting, Doctor? I think something was actively trying to block or corrupt the transmission. The Altarians weren't just sending a distress call, they were fighting to send it through some kind of interference field. Dr. Vance brought up a holographic display showing the signal analysis. Look at these patterns. They're almost like something was trying to jam the signal in real time. Sarah studied the data, feeling a growing sense of unease. Could it be natural phenomena? Solar interference, gravitational anomalies? I don't think so. The patterns are too intelligent, too adaptive. Whatever was interfering with the signal was learning and adjusting its jamming techniques as the transmission continued. The implications were chilling. If something was actively trying to prevent the Altarians from calling for help, it suggested an intelligent adversary with advanced technological capabilities. Doctor, I want you to prepare countermeasures for signal jamming. If we're going to help these people, we need to be able to communicate with them. Already working on it, Captain. I'm also running simulations on what kind of entities might be capable of this level of technological sophistication. As the Prometheus continued its journey through hyperspace, the crew prepared for an increasingly uncertain mission. The Marines conducted combat drills, the engineering teams ran diagnostic after diagnostic, and the science department worked to understand the nature of the threat they might face. On the 9th day, they received another transmission from the Kepler 442 system. This one was much weaker and more fragmented than the first. Captain, to the bridge, Rodriguez's voice crackled over the ship's communication system. We've got another message from the Altarians. Sarah hurried to the bridge, where the communications team was working frantically to clean up the signal. The transmission was barely coherent, filled with static and distortion. Situation deteriorating rapidly, entities have breached the third defense grid, population centers under direct attack, time running out, please hurry. The transmission cut out entirely, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Rodriguez, can you get any more from that signal? Negative, Captain. The interference is getting stronger. It's like whatever's attacking them is getting better at blocking their communications. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. They were still 3 days out from the Kepler 442 system, and the situation was clearly deteriorating rapidly. She turned to her helmsman. Lieutenant Johnson, push the engines to maximum. I want us there in 2 days, not 3. Captain, that'll put significant strain on the hyperdrive systems, Johnson warned. Do it. These people are running out of time. The final 2 days of the journey passed in a blur of activity. The crew worked around the clock to prepare for whatever they might encounter. The uncertainty was eating at everyone, but Sarah could see the determination in her people's eyes. They were humans, after all, and humans didn't back down from a challenge. When the Prometheus finally dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, what they found was far worse than anyone had imagined. Captain, Lieutenant Johnson called out, his voice tight with shock, you need to see this. The main display showed the system before them, but it was wrong. Terribly wrong. Where there should have been 6 planets orbiting peacefully around their star, there was chaos. Strange, geometric structures the size of small moons floated throughout the system, pulsing with an eerie, unnatural light. Around the third planet, massive ships, if they could be called ships, moved in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Dr. Vance, report, Sarah commanded, trying to keep her voice steady. Captain, I'm reading energy signatures unlike anything in our databases. These structures, they're not just ships. There's something else entirely. The readings suggest they're manipulating spacetime itself. And the planet? Dr. Vance's face was pale. Life signs are dropping rapidly. Whatever these entities are, they're not just attacking the Altarians, they're systematically destroying all biological life on the planet. Sarah felt her jaw clench. This was worse than a simple military conflict. This was extermination. Captain, Commander Webb said quietly, we need to consider the possibility that we're outmatched here. These entities have technology that's clearly beyond our understanding. Sarah looked at her crew, seeing the fear and uncertainty in their faces. But she also saw something else, determination. They were humans, and humans didn't abandon people who had asked for their help. Dr. Vance, I want a full analysis of those structures. Find me a weakness. Rodriguez, see if you can re-establish contact with the Altarians. And Major Torres, she called to the Marine commander, prepare your people for whatever comes next. Captain, Major Torres replied, my Marines are ready for anything. Just give us a target. As the Prometheus moved deeper into the system, the true horror of the situation became clear. The geometric structures weren't just ships, they were some kind of harvesting devices, systematically stripping away the planet's atmosphere and biosphere. The Altarian cities, visible from space as glowing points of light, were going dark one by one. Captain, I'm getting a weak signal from the planet's surface, Rodriguez reported. It's heavily encrypted, but I think I can break through. The main display flickered, showing the familiar figure of Zephyr 9. But where before the Altarian had appeared composed despite the danger, now they looked haggard and desperate. The background showed what appeared to be a command center under siege, with other Altarians working frantically at alien control panels. Humans, Zephyr 9 said, relief clear in their voice despite the universal translator. You came. We did not know if our message had reached you. We're here, Sarah replied. But we need to understand what we're facing. What are these entities? Zephyr 9's expression grew grim. We call them the Devourers. They are not from our reality. They exist in the spaces between dimensions, feeding on the life force of entire worlds. We have never encountered them before, but our historical records speak of other civilizations that simply vanished.
How did they find your world? We do not know.
They appeared without warning 3 rotations ago, emerging from tears in space itself.
Our defensive systems were useless against them.
They do not fight as we understand fighting, they simply consume. Sarah felt a chill at the alien's words.
Zephyr 9, we're going to help you, but we need to know, is there any way to stop them?
Our scientists believe they are vulnerable to what you might call chaotic energy patterns, the kind of unpredictable, adaptive responses that most civilized species cannot produce. It is why we called for Deathworlders. Your species' ability to think and act in ways that defy logical prediction may be the only thing that can disrupt their feeding patterns. The transmission began to break up with interference. Captain, Zephyr 9 continued, their voice becoming distorted, we are uploading what data we have on the Devourers to your ship.
Please, our children are dying. Help us. The transmission cut out, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Dr. Vance, did you get that data? Sarah asked. Yes, Captain. Analyzing now.
Dr. Vance's fingers flew across her console.
This is incredible.
According to this data, the Devourers exist partially outside normal spacetime.
They're anchored to our reality through those geometric structures we saw. If we could somehow disrupt those anchors,
we might be able to send them back where they came from, Sarah finished.
What would it take?
The Altarian data suggests that massive energy discharge directly into the anchor points might destabilize them.
But Captain, we're talking about structures the size of small moons. Our weapons, even at full power, might not be enough.
Sarah studied the tactical display, her mind racing. Then, slowly, a plan began to form.
It was insane, unprecedented, and probably suicidal.
In other words, it was exactly the kind of plan that only a Deathworlder would consider.
Dr. Vance, what would happen if we overloaded our hyperdrive while in close proximity to one of those anchor structures? The science officer's face went pale.
Captain, that would create a catastrophic energy release. The explosion would probably destroy the ship and everything within a 100-kilometer radius.
But would it be enough to destabilize the anchor?
Dr. Vance ran quick calculations.
Theoretically, yes.
The quantum cascade from a hyperdrive overload would create exactly the kind of chaotic energy signature that the Altarian data suggests might disrupt the Devourer's dimensional anchors.
Commander Webb stepped forward. Captain, you can't be seriously considering. I am, Sarah interrupted. But not with the crew aboard.
We'll need to automate the ship's systems and evacuate everyone to escape pods.
Captain, Major Torres interjected, my Marines didn't sign up to run from a fight.
Sarah looked at her senior staff, seeing the same determined expression on all their faces. These were humans, raised on a death world, bred for survival against impossible odds. They weren't going to abandon the Altarians, no matter the cost.
All right, Sarah said finally. Here's what we're going to do.
We're going to take the fight to them, but we're going to do it the human way, unpredictably, chaotically, and with absolutely no regard for what's considered tactically sound by galactic standards. Over the next several hours, the crew of the Prometheus worked to implement Sarah's plan. It was complex, dangerous, and relied heavily on the kind of creative thinking that had made humans successful on their harsh homeworld. The plan called for the ship to launch a series of simultaneous attacks on multiple anchor structures.
Each attack would be different, using tactics that no logical military computer could predict. Some would be direct frontal assaults, others would involve stealth approaches, and still others would use the ship's scientific equipment in ways it was never designed for.
Captain, Dr. Vance reported, I've been studying the Devourers' movement patterns. They're too organized, too predictable.
They're following some kind of optimal efficiency algorithm. If we can introduce enough chaos into their calculations,
we might be able to confuse them long enough to do some real damage, Sarah finished.
Excellent work, Doctor. As the Prometheus approached the first anchor structure, the crew prepared for battle.
The geometric shape loomed before them, its surfaces shifting and flowing in ways that seemed to violate the laws of physics. Strange energies danced across its surface, and Sarah could feel an almost physical pressure against her mind as they drew closer.
"All hands, this is the captain," Sarah announced over the ship's communication system. "We're about to engage an enemy unlike anything humanity has ever faced.
They're counting on us to behave predictably, to follow standard military doctrine.
We're going to prove them wrong.
We're going to show them what happens when you threaten a species that evolved fighting hurricanes, earthquakes, and predators that could kill us with a single swipe."
The first attack came without warning.
Instead of the expected long-range bombardment, the Prometheus dropped out of hyperspace directly above the anchor structure and began firing everything it had at point-blank range. The Devourer's defensive systems, calibrated for long-range combat, were caught completely off guard. Direct hit.
Lieutenant Johnson called out as the ship's weapons tore into the alien structure.
Hull breach on the target. But the celebration was short-lived. The anchor structure began to pulse with angry red light, and suddenly the space around the Prometheus was filled with smaller Devourer vessels, their weapons charging with malevolent energy.
"Evasive maneuvers," Sarah commanded. "Show them how a Deathworlder dances." What followed was a battle unlike anything in recorded galactic history.
The Prometheus moved through space with an almost organic fluidity, twisting and turning in patterns that seemed to defy physics. The ship's pilot, trained in the chaotic weather patterns of Earth's atmosphere, flew with an instinctive understanding of three-dimensional combat that the Devourer's logical minds couldn't predict.
"Captain, they're trying to surround us," Commander Webb called out.
"Then we'll give them something to surround," Sarah replied with a grim smile.
"Prepare the mines."
The Prometheus suddenly stopped all evasive maneuvers and hung motionless in space. The Devourers, thinking they had cornered their prey, closed in for the kill. At the last moment, the human ship released a cloud of proximity mines and used its thrusters to rocket away from the position. The explosion was spectacular. 3 Devourer vessels were destroyed outright, and the anchor structure itself was severely damaged. But more importantly, the Devourer's formation was broken, their logical attack pattern disrupted.
"Phase 2, Sarah ordered. "Time to get creative." The second attack was even more unconventional.
Instead of attacking another anchor structure directly, the Prometheus began using its scientific equipment to scan and analyze the Devourer's dimensional rifts. Dr. Vance had discovered that the rifts were vulnerable to specific frequency disruptions, and the crew began using their communication array as a weapon.
"It's working!" Dr. Vance exclaimed as one of the smaller rifts began to collapse. "The frequency disruption is destabilizing their dimensional anchor."
But the Devourers were learning. Their next attack came from multiple directions simultaneously, and their weapons had adapted to the Prometheus's evasive patterns. The ship shuddered under the impact of alien energy weapons, and damage reports began pouring in from all decks.
"Hull breaches on decks 7 and 12. Engineering reported.
Shield generators are down to 40%.
Sarah gritted her teeth.
They were running out of time, and the Devourers were adapting to their tactics faster than she had hoped.
But humans had one advantage that no other species in the galaxy possessed: they got more dangerous when they were cornered.
"All hands, prepare for ramming speed," Sarah announced, her voice carrying a cold determination that chilled everyone on the bridge.
"Captain, that's suicide," Commander Webb protested. "No," Sarah replied, "that's human." The Prometheus turned toward the largest anchor structure, its engines roaring to life.
But instead of the expected suicide run, the ship suddenly changed course at the last moment, using the anchor structure's own gravitational field to slingshot around it at incredible speed. The maneuver was so unexpected, so completely illogical from a tactical standpoint, that the Devourer's defensive systems couldn't react in time. The Prometheus rocketed past the anchor structure, its weapons firing continuously, tearing massive holes in the alien construct.
"Direct hit on the primary anchor," Dr. Vance reported.
"The dimensional rift is destabilizing." The effect was immediate and dramatic. The anchor structure began to collapse in on itself, and the Devourer's vessels in the immediate area were pulled into the dimensional rift as it snapped shut. But the victory was short-lived. There were still 5 more anchor structures in the system, and the Devourers were now fully alert to the human threat. The battle that followed was a masterpiece of chaotic warfare. The Prometheus engaged in hit-and-run tactics, using every trick in the human military handbook and several that had never been tried before. The crew fought with the desperate creativity that had allowed their species to survive on a planet that was actively trying to kill them. Major Torres and his Marines boarded one of the smaller Devourer vessels, fighting hand-to-hand in the corridors of a ship that existed partially outside normal spacetime. The Marines' ability to adapt to impossible conditions allowed them to function in environments that would have driven most species insane. "This is insane," one of the Marines reported over the comb. "The walls keep changing, and gravity shifts every few seconds." "Adapt and overcome, Marines," Major Torres replied. "Remember, we're from Earth. We've dealt with worse." And incredibly, they had. The Marines fought their way through the alien ship, using their chaotic, unpredictable tactics to overwhelm the Devourer's logical defenses. They planted explosives throughout the vessel and evacuated just as it tore itself apart from the inside. Meanwhile, Dr. Vance and her science team had made a breakthrough. By analyzing the debris from the destroyed anchor structures, they had discovered the frequency signature that connected all the Devourer's dimensional rifts. "Captain," Dr. Vance reported, "I think I know how to close all the rifts simultaneously. But it will require us to get close to the primary anchor structure near the planet." Sarah looked at the tactical display. The primary anchor was surrounded by dozens of Devourer vessels, and the space around it was filled with defensive energy fields. It would be a suicide run. "How close?" Sarah asked. "Close enough that we won't be able to escape the explosion when the rift collapses." The bridge fell silent. Sarah looked at her crew, seeing the same determination in their faces that had carried humanity from the caves of Earth to the stars. They knew what this mission meant, not just for the Eltarians, but for every species in the galaxy that might face the Devourers in the future. "All hands, this is the captain," Sarah announced. "We have a chance to end this, but it's going to cost us everything. Anyone who wants to evacuate to the escape pods, now's the time." Nobody moved. "We're with you, Captain," Commander Webb said quietly. "All the way." The final approach to the primary anchor structure was a nightmare of defensive fire and reality-bending attacks. The Devourers threw everything they had at the approaching human ship, but the Prometheus kept coming, its crew fighting with the desperate fury of a species that had learned to thrive in the face of extinction. "Hull integrity down to 20%. Engineering reported. "We're losing atmosphere on multiple decks." "Keep us together just a little longer," Sarah commanded. "We're almost there." The primary anchor structure was massive, easily the size of a small moon. Its surface was covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change as they watched, and the dimensional rift at its center pulsed with malevolent energy. "Captain," Dr. Vance called out, "I'm detecting massive energy buildup from the anchor. They're preparing to open a much larger rift." Sarah felt ice in her veins. If the Devourers opened a larger rift, they could bring through reinforcements, or worse, they could begin consuming other worlds in the system simultaneously. "Not on my watch," Sarah said grimly. "All weapons, fire at will. Give them everything we've got." The Prometheus's final attack was a thing of beauty and terror. Every weapon on the ship fired simultaneously, pouring incredible amounts of energy into the anchor structure. The crew fought with the desperate intensity of their Deathworld heritage, pushing their ship and themselves beyond all rational limits. The anchor structure began to crack under the assault, its geometric patterns flickering and failing. The dimensional rift at its center started to fluctuate wildly, and Sarah could feel the fabric of spacetime itself beginning to tear. "Captain," Dr. Vance said, her voice barely audible over the chaos, "the rift is destabilizing. But the cascade effect is spreading to all the other anchors in the system." Sarah looked at the tactical display and saw that Dr. Vance was right. The collapse of the primary anchor was causing a chain reaction throughout the system. The other anchor structures were beginning to fail, their dimensional rifts snapping shut one by one. "We did it," Commander Webb said in amazement. "We actually did it." But their victory came at a cost. The Prometheus was caught in the gravitational distortions caused by the collapsing rifts, and the ship's hull was finally giving way under the incredible stresses.
"Captain," Lieutenant Johnson called out, "we're being pulled into the dimensional cascade. I can't break us free."
Sarah looked around the bridge at her crew, these incredible humans who had followed her into the impossible and made it possible. They had saved an entire species, and possibly the galaxy itself, through sheer human stubbornness and creativity.
"It's been an honor serving with all of you," Sarah said quietly.
But as the Prometheus was pulled toward the collapsing rift, something unexpected happened. The dimensional cascade that was tearing the ship apart suddenly reversed itself, and the human vessel found itself caught in a bubble of stable spacetime.
"Captain!"
Dr. Vance exclaimed, "I'm reading massive energy signatures from the planet.
The Altarians are doing something."
On the main display, they could see beams of energy rising from the planet's surface, creating a protective field around the Prometheus.
The Altarians, saved from extinction by the human sacrifice, were using their advanced technology to return the favor.
"Prometheus, this is Zephyr 9, came the familiar voice over the communication system.
"We cannot allow the ones who saved us to perish. We are stabilizing the dimensional cascade around your vessel. Zephyr 9, can you get us out of here?" Sarah asked.
"We are creating a stable corridor through the dimensional distortions. But you must act quickly, we cannot maintain this field for long." The next few minutes were among the most harrowing in Sarah's career. The Prometheus limped through the corridor of stable spacetime, its hull groaning under the stress of the dimensional forces around them. But finally, impossibly, they broke free of the cascade zone and found themselves in normal space. Behind them, the last of the anchor structures collapsed in on itself, and the Devourer's dimensional rifts snapped shut with a sound like reality itself screaming. The geometric ships that had been terrorizing the system were pulled back into whatever hellish dimension they had come from, and the threat was finally ended.
"Captain," Rodriguez called out, "I'm receiving a transmission from the planet."
The main display showed Zephyr 9 again, but this time the Altarian was surrounded by others of their species, all looking at the humans with expressions of profound gratitude. "People of Earth," Zephyr 9 said, "you have saved not just our world, but our entire species. We had given up hope, but you came when we called, and you fought when we could not. You have shown us what it truly means to be strong." Sarah felt tears in her eyes as she looked at the alien faces on the screen. "We're just glad we could help," she said simply. "But you have done more than help," Zephyr 9 continued. "You have shown the galaxy that there is hope against even the most impossible odds. Word of your victory will spread to every civilized world, and they will know that the Deathworlders of Earth stand ready to defend the innocent."
As the battered Prometheus began its long journey home, Sarah reflected on what they had accomplished.
They had faced an enemy that was literally from another dimension, using technology beyond their understanding, and they had won through sheer human determination and creativity. But more than that, they had proven something important about humanity's place in the galaxy. They were not just another species expanding into space, they were the guardians that other species could call upon when facing the impossible. The journey home took 3 weeks, during which the crew worked tirelessly to repair the damage to their ship. The Prometheus limped back to Luna Base looking like it had been through a war, which in many ways it had. But the crew was intact, and their mission had been a complete success. Director Walsh was waiting for them at the docking bay, along with what seemed like half the personnel of Luna Base. As Sarah disembarked, she was surprised to find herself facing a crowd of reporters and officials. "Captain Chen," Director Walsh said, stepping forward, "on behalf of the United Earth Government and the Galactic Expansion Initiative, I want to thank you and your crew for your service. What you've accomplished will be remembered for generations." "We were just doing our job, sir," Sarah replied, but Walsh shook his head.
"No, Captain.
You were doing much more than that. You were showing the galaxy what humanity is capable of when we're fighting for something greater than ourselves." Over the following weeks, the story of the Prometheus's mission spread throughout human space and beyond. The Altarians shared their records of the battle with other species, and soon the entire galaxy knew about the humans who had defeated the Devourers. More importantly, other species began to reach out to humanity with their own requests for help. The reputation of the Deathworlders of Earth spread far and wide, and soon human ships were being dispatched to assist civilizations throughout the galaxy. Sarah found herself promoted to admiral and put in charge of the newly formed Galactic Defense Initiative. Her first task was to establish a rapid response force that could be dispatched to any world facing an existential threat. "The galaxy is a dangerous place," Sarah told her new command staff during their first briefing. "There are things out there that most civilizations can't comprehend, let alone fight. But we can. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day, and we not only survived, we thrived. That makes us uniquely qualified to stand between the darkness and the light." The Eltarians became humanity's first true allies in the galaxy, sharing their advanced technology in exchange for Earth's protection. Other species soon followed, and within a decade, humanity had become the de facto protectors of the galactic frontier. But perhaps the most important legacy of the mission to Kepler 442 was the message it sent to the universe. There were species out there, beyond the edges of known space, that preyed on the weak and the peaceful. But now they knew that those worlds were not defenseless. They were protected by Deathworlders. Years later, as Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defender, the flagship of the Galactic Defense Initiative, she often thought about that first distress call from the Eltarians. It had been a cry for help that had changed everything, not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy. The call had brought the Deathworlders to the alien frontiers, and the galaxy would never be the same. Where once there had been only fear and helplessness in the face of cosmic threats, now there was hope. Hope that when the darkness came, there would be humans ready to stand against it. And in the cold depths of space, on worlds that most species would consider uninhabitable, human colonies continued to expand. Each new world was a testament to humanity's unique nature, their ability to not just survive, but to thrive in conditions that would kill most other species. The Deathworlders had answered the call, and the galaxy was safe in their hands. But Sarah knew that this was just the beginning. The universe was vast and full of wonders and terrors in equal measure. Somewhere out there, other species were facing threats they couldn't comprehend or defeat. And when they sent out their desperate calls for help, they would find that the Deathworlders of Earth were listening, ready to answer the call once again. The frontier was infinite, and humanity's watch had just begun.